Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here to talk to you about Hildegard of Bingen. Maybe some of you have heard about her. She had really her 15 minutes of fame a couple of decades ago, but she's now sort of part of the discourse of music. And because, women composers and artists are now a big thing, the name of Hildegard is usually cited when we talk about great women composers of the past at the time when women weren't allowed to be great women composers or great composers of any kind. There were just a few who are really famous names. There was Barbara Strozzi, there was Elizabeth Jacotet de la Guerre. There were a few, before we get to the 19th century when there were a few more and gradually into the 20th century. Now, Hildegard was born around, 1170, it says here, or she died around 1170, something like that. Well, here we have the dates. 1098 to 1179. So she lived to be 81. And she was, as they say, an abbess. She founded an abbey in Bingen. And she was a remarkable woman by any standards. I mean, not only was she an abbess, but she was considered to be a woman of exceptional piety and mystical wisdom. She wrote books on everything, including, medicine, which must be kind of interesting given what they knew back then, and on religious matters. But she was also a composer. She wrote religious poetry. It was all religious poetry. And she set it to her own music, which is really very remarkable given the time, because in those days, the only music that there was that was notated was monophonic chant. In other words, it was like Gregorian chant, but her chants are not Gregorian. They're not standard church melodies. They are unique melodies that she created, and they are unharmonized. They only exist as one line of melody, and that's it. And of course, they would have been performed in her abbey by women, by nuns under her care. So it's really a remarkable body of work. We're quite fortunate that it survived. And there was a long time that went by between, 1098 and 1179, before another female composer of similar significance, will come to our notice. So Hildegard was a big deal in medieval music. She really was. And she also, in addition to writing all of these poems that she set to her own music, she sort of invented the morality play, or the first operatic morality play set to music. It's called the Ordo Virtutum. And it's about, the temptation of a soul by Satan. And it's actually rather interesting because, of course, it is chant. I mean, it's single line of melody. The character of Satan is the only guy in the entire opera. And Satan is denied music because he is satanic, and therefore he is not capable of singing, which is, according to Hildegard, or in her way of thinking, a song of praise. But what's fascinating about it is that this idea of denying him the ability to sing would become a fixture of opera down through the ages. Once opera really got going, which wasn't until, the 1500s and 1600s, the late 1500s and early 1600s, 500 years later. But even then, this idea of withdrawing song from a character in an opera is a recognized device. For example, if you go as late as Porgy and Bess, all of the black characters sing. The white characters, who is just the sheriff, and they don't. They're not permitted to sing. At the very end of Peter Grimes, he loses the ability to sing, and Balstrode comes up and says, "Come on, Peter, I'll help you with the boat. Sail out." Song finally disappears as a result of Peter's insanity. We see this as a trope that appears again and again and again in Western civilization and in music, the denial of song in the context of a drama or worship or whatever it is. And for Hildegard, drama and worship were the same thing. So it's very, very interesting. And so I wanted to talk to you about what's around if you want to sample Hildegard. Now, the biggest Hildegard collection is, I have these. I've got 6 discs on Deutsche Harmonia Mundi by the group Sequentia. And they have done the Ordo Virtutum. Here it is, the Ordo Virtutum. This is 2 discs, and it's the entire thing, the whole play, the morality play. And it's really it's quite moving if you're into that sort of thing, if you're in the mood for it. And you have to be in the mood for it, because like I said, to call it austere would be an understatement, at least by regular standards. The other 5 discs here are all settings of her religious poetry, which she set to her own chant-like music. And of course, these modern performances, they try and give the music as much variety as they possibly can, in terms of using occasionally instruments and providing sometimes drone figures and other things, having different voices of different coloring sing it, to try and, give you an entire album that isn't going to make you comatose. Because I have to say, and I mean this very honestly, however beautiful it is, and it is lovely and ecstatic music, it's gorgeous. I want to listen to it maybe once every 10 years. That's how I feel about chant generally. I appreciate what it is, but I don't want to have to play it all that often. You have to be in a very particular frame of mind. I do. Let's put it that way. Maybe not you, in order to listen to it. So if you want to get some of these Deutsche Harmonia Mundi things with Sequentia, they are marvelous. They are absolutely beautifully done, and it's a whole series, and they're just lovely. But if you just want one Hildegard is enough. The recording that I initially got, that got me into Hildegard, because there weren't any for the longest time, was this one, the first Hyperion release featuring the Gothic Voices. And this is with Emma Kirkby, when she was young and her voice was pure and innocent and white as the driven snow, as they say in the biz. And this is an absolutely gorgeous disc of select numbers. It's like, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 numbers. And it's really, really, really beautiful. It was one of Hyperion's great early successes as well, because it was totally new repertoire. It was magnificently performed, and it hasn't aged at all. It's still as lovely as it was the day that I first heard it. So I also would very strongly recommend that if you're just getting into your Hildegard, that you try and get this Gothic Voices recording on Hyperion. It was a bestseller for a long, long, long time, and it's truly special. And, we only need so many discs of chant and only so many discs of medieval music, I think. I know there are specialists who can't get enough, and they're welcome to have as much as they can get their hands on. But I think for the people I'm usually talking to, you folks out there who are generally into like instrumental music and symphonies and chamber music and things like that, things with more than one part, a little of this stuff will go a long way. That's my thought. I may have mistaken my audience, but I don't think so. So the Gothic Voices disc on Hyperion is also marvelous. And if you really like what you've heard, you can make comparisons in the same music to the performances by Sequentia on Deutsche Harmonia Mundi. And you can move on to the Ordo Virtutum and get the whole Hildegardian enchilada and see what you think. So that's Hildegard. I wanted you to know who she is. She's an important person in the history of medieval music. And that means she's an important person in the history of Western music more generally. Give her a shot if you have a chance. Download a track, see what you think, and then take it from there. Keep on listening, friends. Thank you for joining me. Take care.